When the lights go out and your phone shows no service, how will you reach the outside world? Imagine a massive blackout or natural disaster hitting not just a flicker, but a full grid-down scenario. It's happened before. Hurricane Katrina knocked out power and phone lines. Puerto Rico went dark after Maria, and in the recent Maui wildfires, entire communities were cut off from communication. In these moments, information is survival. You need to know what's happening and let others know you're okay or need help, fast. Most people assume their cell phone will magically save them, but here's the brutal truth. When the grid goes down, so do most of our modern communication luxuries. Don't panic, though. We're going to run through 10 highly overlooked ways you can communicate in a grid-down emergency. These range from simple $5 gadgets to high-tech lifesavers. Some of them might surprise you, and some might literally save your life. Let's jump in and remember, in a disaster, failing to plan is planning to fail. So pay attention. Your family's safety could depend on one of these methods. 1. Mobile phone. Maximize texting and old-school calling. Yes, we start with the obvious. Your cell phone. Duh, my phone. But if the power's out, isn't the phone dead too? Not necessarily. Even if electricity is down, cell towers often have backup power for a while. The key is to use your phone smartly. First, don't waste precious battery on long voice calls or mindless apps. If the network is overwhelmed, as it often is right after a disaster, try text messaging instead of calling. Texts use tiny bits of bandwidth and will often go through when calls won't. The FCC and emergency agencies repeatedly stress this. A simple SMS, "I'm okay at home," is more likely to get delivered than a 5-minute call during a crisis. We saw this during hurricanes and earthquakes. People couldn't call, but texts trickled out. So remember, when you hit network congestion, shoot a text. Now here's a pro tip. Many overlook. Keep important numbers written down on paper. If your phone dies or you can't access your contacts, you should still be able to reach family or your emergency contact. In fact, stick a small card in your phone case with critical phone numbers. That way, even if your smartphone is a brick, a Good Samaritan's phone or a landline can be your lifeline. Speaking of landlines, do you have one at home? Many Americans ditch them, but if you do still have a traditional copper landline, it may work even when power is out. Old-school landline phones draw power from the phone line itself, so get a cheap corded phone and stash it in a closet for emergencies. Cordless base stations won't work without house power, so we mean an old-fashioned phone with a cord, like in Grandma's house. That dial tone could be worth its weight in gold when cell service is down. During some past blackouts, people who plugged in corded phones were shocked, in a good way, to hear a dial tone when nothing else worked. Don't forget to conserve your cell battery like it's life support. Turn off background apps, dim the screen, and avoid idle chit-chat. Keep calls super brief, just enough to convey vital info. And have a plan to recharge. A car charger, a power bank, or solar charger in your emergency kit. Ready.gov actually recommends cell phone with chargers and a backup battery as a must in every emergency kit. Your phone can be a lifeline if you plan ahead and use it wisely. 2. Emergency whistle your voice when yours fails. Here's one that's almost too simple. A whistle. Yep, the kind you'd use to start a Little League game, only this one might start your rescue. In a disaster scenario, if you're trapped, injured, or need to get attention, yelling at the top of your lungs will only last so long. A good emergency whistle, on the other hand, can cut through noise and travel an impressively long distance. How far? Under ideal conditions, over a mile. That's right, a mile. Even a small, P-less whistle, think of those loud referee whistles, often hits 100-120 decibels, which can be audible a mile away in open terrain. Unless you're Superman, you're not yelling that loud. For example, one popular little whistle, the SOL Rescue Howler, is so small it fits on a keychain, yet can be heard well over a mile away in the right conditions. Now imagine you're separated from your family in the dark or buried in rubble. It's happened in tornadoes and earthquakes. 3 sharp blasts on a whistle is the universal distress signal. It carries. Rescue teams listen for this stuff. In fact, FEMA specifically lists a whistle in the basic emergency kit items to signal for help. Every member of your family should have one on them or in their go bag. Teach your kids that if they're lost, blow that whistle like their life depends on it. Because it might. A bit of humor. It feels kind of silly to carry a whistle until you desperately need it. Then it's the smartest thing you ever put in your pocket. At around $5, it's probably the cheapest survival tool you can get. And unlike your voice, it won't go hoarse and it doesn't need batteries. So go ahead, channel your inner coach, and toss a whistle in your emergency kit. It's loud, annoying, and absolutely beautiful when you need to be found. 3. Signal mirror flashing SOS across miles. A signal mirror being aimed to reflect sunlight. This small, low-tech device can flash a visible distress signal for many miles when the sun is shining. This one is old-school genius. A signal mirror is literally a mirror, often a small plastic or glass one with a special aiming hole, that uses reflected sunlight to send a flash signal. Why is it in this list? Because those flashes can be seen incredibly far away, often much farther than you'd ever expect. We're talking distances of 10-20 miles in many cases. There are documented instances of aircraft 30,000 feet up spotting mirror flashes from people on the ground. On record in perfect conditions, signal mirror flashes have been seen nearly 100 miles away. No, that's not a typo. 100 miles. Basically horizon to horizon. Even if you only get a few miles of range on a cloudy day, that could be the difference in being rescued or not. The great thing is, mirrors are ultra-light and compact, easy to stick in a pocket or phone case. A quality signal mirror usually has a retro-reflective aiming grid, that little clear spot in the center. You hold it up to your eye, catch the sun through it, and you'll see a bright dot. That's your sight. You then angle the mirror to project that dot onto a target, like a plane, helicopter, or distant person. It's like a laser pointer made of sunlight. And when someone sees a bright flash in an odd color, sunlight glinting is often bluish, 3 times in a row, they know it's a distress call. This tool is so overlooked it's almost criminal. Many hikers, boaters, and pilots know about it, but the average person, not so much. Yet it costs under $10 and can literally reach out farther than your voice, whistle, or even some radios. In a grid-down scenario, maybe you're trying to signal a search and rescue team or even communicate with a neighbor a hilltop away without walking. A couple flashes during daylight can do it. At night you can actually use moonlight with a mirror, though range will be shorter. Still, it's been done. Also, a mirror's not a one-trick pony. You can use it for personal grooming or to help start a fire, angled to concentrate sunlight. But signaling is the biggie. Fun fact, experts often say signaling is one of the most overlooked parts of survival. Prep people focus on food, water, shelter, but forget how they'd alert someone to their plight. A mirror weighs nothing, so toss it in your kit. Next time a news chopper is flying overhead and you need help, you'll be ready to flash them a message, literally. 4. Battery-powered or hand-crank radio. Receive vital information. When the grid goes down, you're going to feel blind. No TV, no internet, phone might be out. How do you even know what's happening beyond your immediate street? That's why every prepper and every household should have an emergency radio. I'm talking about a battery-operated or hand-crank AM/FM radio, ideally one that also picks up NOAA weather radio frequencies. This will be your ears to the outside world. In many disasters, local radio stations and NOAA weather alerts are the last line of public communication. For example, after Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico, the entire island lost power and cell service. People were cut off, not for hours, but for weeks. During that time, the only reliable information source was battery-powered radios tuning into emergency broadcasts. One survivor recounted that as the storm raged and afterward, the radio was all we had tying us to the rest of civilization. That gives you goosebumps. Imagine sitting in total darkness, no phone, and the only news of the outside comes crackling through a little radio speaker. So, you need one. Preferably get a model that has multiple power options. A hand crank you can turn to charge it. Your arm might get tired, but it beats silence. A small solar panel on it for daylight charging, and the ability to take standard batteries, too. Many emergency radios today are Swiss Army gadgets. They have LED flashlights built in, some have a USB port so you can charge your phone off the internal dynamo, and they all receive AM, FM, and NOAA weather channels. The NOAA channels are key. That's where you'll hear official evacuation orders, weather updates, or FEMA information 24/7 in an emergency. These radios often have a standby mode that will sound an alarm when a NOAA alert is issued, called NOAA Weather Radio with Tone Alert. It's life-saving tech for tornado warnings, etc. In fact, FEMA's recommended emergency kit list explicitly includes battery-powered or hand-crank radio and a NOAA Weather Radio with Tone Alert. Check your kit. Do you have one? If not, fix that. Using it is straightforward. When things go south, turn on AM/FM and find your local news or emergency station. Also check NOAA frequencies for broader info. You might hear about incoming storms or relief efforts on those. Keep spare batteries for it, and store them outside the radio so they don't corrode it over years. If it's crank or solar, make sure you know how to use those features before you need it. One more tip. You can also use your car radio to get info and charge your phone if your car is accessible and running. Just be mindful of carbon monoxide if your car is in a garage and of fuel if gas is in short supply. But a dedicated emergency radio is smaller and you can carry it around the house or shelter. In summary, get a radio and keep it handy. When the power's out and everyone is rumor-mongering, you'll be the one calmly saying, "I heard on the radio that help is coming tomorrow," or "They said on NOAA that the storm's moving east." Information is power and sometimes comfort. Even if all you hear is a familiar voice on a radio show amid the darkness, that thread of normalcy can keep you going. 5. Walkie-talkies, FRS, GMRS radios, local communication with your group. Let's switch to two-way communication on the local scale. If the grid's down and phones are dead, how do you talk to your spouse across the neighborhood or your kids at a nearby friend's house? Walkie-talkies are the answer. These little handheld two-way radios, often using FRS or GMRS frequencies in the US, are absolute gems in an emergency. Yet so many people don't think to have them. They're cheap, readily available at Walmart, and require no infrastructure, your own personal mini communication network. FRS, Family Radio Service. Walkie-talkies are common. No license required, just turn it on, set the channel, and talk. GMRS, General Mobile Radio Service. Radios are similar but can have higher power and range. However, technically, GMRS does require a license from the FCC. No test, just a fee. Many consumer walkie-talkies nowadays are hybrid FRS GMRS units. The point is, these radios let you talk directly to another radio within a few miles. In flat, open areas, some higher power units might reach 2-3 miles or more. In dense urban or hilly areas, range might be half a mile or 1 mile, but that's still plenty to communicate around your local vicinity when phones fail. Picture this. A storm has knocked out power and cell service. You need to run to the store, that one store running on a generator, and your spouse is at home. With walkie-talkies, you can stay in contact en route. "Hey, the line here is crazy long, might be a while," etc. Or if you're hiking and get separated, you can coordinate a meetup. In a true disaster scenario, maybe one person from your family goes to check on an elderly neighbor down the street. Having radios keeps everyone connected without a cell tower. I'll give a personal example. In my own bug-out bags, I stash a pair of small two-way radios. We've preset them to a certain channel and privacy code. If we ever have to split up or do a perimeter check around a campsite, those radios could be a lifesaver. We even gave our neighbors a radio so that if something happened, say a late-night emergency, we have an agreed channel to reach each other. Sounds a bit paranoid, but during one neighborhood power outage, guess what? The cell network got bogged down. Everyone was streaming or on the phone. And our walkie-talkies worked like a charm to see if the neighbor's sump pump was handling the rain. A few tips. Decide on your channel ahead of time. For example, tell your family, if something happens, use channel 5 or whatever. Because flipping through 22 channels yelling, "Hello? Anybody?" is not effective. Also, keep the radios charged. Many come with rechargeable batteries. Top them off every few months or keep AA batteries on hand. Teach everyone in the family, especially kids, how to push the button to talk and wait a beat, so they don't cut off the first word. It's also worth practicing radio etiquette. Speak clearly, say who you're calling, Alice, this is Bob. Do you copy? It feels a bit military, but it works. And be aware that FRS GMRS is not secure. Anyone with a radio scanner or another walkie can listen in. So don't broadcast your bank account info or anything sensitive. Finally, many walkie-talkies now come with bonus features like weather radio receive, flashlight, etc. But even the simplest kid's walkie-talkie is better than nothing if it lets you coordinate with family during chaos. They're called family radios for a reason. They're perfect for keeping your family in touch in an emergency. Over and out. Had to say it. 6. Ham radio, amateur radio. Long-distance lifeline. Time to talk about the big guns of emergency comms. Ham radio. You've probably heard of ham radio operators. Maybe you envision hobbyists chatting about Morse code in their basements. But guess what? Those hobbyists might be the only people who can get a message out when disaster strikes. There's a reason the saying exists. When all else fails, ham radio works. In the aftermath of major catastrophes, ham radio often steps in when modern systems fall apart. Case in point, Hurricane Katrina, 2005. The storm and flooding knocked out all normal communications in New Orleans. No phones, no 911 dispatch, nothing. Amateur radio operators were literally the only viable communication method in and out of some areas. They relayed emergency messages and helped coordinate rescue efforts, saving lives. Another example, after Hurricane Maria, 2017, pummeled Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, ham radio operators became the lifeline. Reports from that disaster note that, in the aftermath, amateur ham radio operators were the only ones capable of transmitting. They helped relay messages from island residents to loved ones on the mainland, coordinated evacuations, and worked with relief organizations. For weeks, they were the safety net when even FEMA and the National Guard couldn't get their radios to work. Let that sink in. The only communications for an entire region were coming from volunteer ham operators with their own equipment. So how does this help you, an average person or prepper? Ham radio is powerful, but it requires a bit of commitment. To transmit legally, you need to get an FCC license, at least the entry-level technician license. It's not hard, no Morse code requirement anymore, just a written test on basic radio rules and electronics. Many people self-study or take a one-day class and pass it. Frankly, I encourage it if you're serious about emergency prepping. Why? Because once you're licensed, you can practice using the equipment before an emergency. As one expert put it, if you're not familiar with your radio, you're unlikely to magically figure out how to reach someone 500 miles away during a crisis. Ham radios aren't fire and forget. They have multiple frequency bands. You might need to know what local repeater frequencies are, etc. Practice makes perfect. On the other hand, you are allowed to use any means necessary, including ham radio, to call for help in a true life-threatening emergency, even without a license. The FCC's rule is basically, if it's to save a life or prevent a major disaster, you won't get in trouble for keying that mic. But don't count on being able to just turn on a $30 radio and reach someone across the state unless you've at least learned the basics. Let's talk gear. A very popular emergency ham radio is the handheld VHF-UHF transceiver, often called an HT handy-talkie. The famous one in prepper circles is the Baofeng UV5R because it's like $25, $30 and can listen to a wide range of frequencies and transmit on them if you unlock it. It's a cheap starter radio. With something like that, you can communicate locally, typically 20 miles range line of sight, more if using a repeater tower. Repeaters are community-run radio relays, often on hilltops, that receive your weak handheld signal and retransmit it stronger over a wide area. If the repeaters around you have backup power, you could potentially talk across an entire city or county. Even if repeaters fail, hams can use HF radios, big rigs with long antennas, to talk hundreds or thousands of miles via ionospheric skip. That requires more expensive equipment and higher license levels, but it's doable. During disasters, you often have networks of hams passing info from zone to zone, effectively leapfrogging messages out to where the internet and phones are working. For example, during Katrina, operators in the disaster zone relayed messages to hams in Texas, who then phoned authorities or family elsewhere. Another advantage, ham radio can receive as well as transmit. Even if you don't want to talk, a ham radio lets you listen in on a lot of useful communications. Local police, fire dispatch, unless encrypted, weather spotters, other people's radio reports, etc. You become the fly on the wall gathering intel. There are also organized emergency nets on ham bands. They'll be sharing on-the-ground reports. It's like having a multi-band scanner that can also, in a pinch, call out for help. One more thing, the community. Ham radio folks are generally friendly and very helpful to newcomers interested in emergency comms. There are nationwide programs like ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency Service, and races that organize hams to assist public agencies in disasters. When you join the ham world, you tap into a network of people who practice emergency communication. They do drills, they show up with radios when hurricanes are coming, etc. It's reassuring to know that if you holler on a common emergency frequency, odds are someone like that might hear you. To wrap this up, ham radio is the ace up your sleeve for communication. It's not as plug-and-play as a walkie-talkie or as trendy as a satellite device, but boy does it work. It has proved itself from the 1940s to 2023 and beyond. In fact, the motto of many ham groups is, "When all else fails, ham radio." This isn't just pride, it's history. So if you're serious about grid-down scenarios, consider investing the time to get a license and a decent radio setup. It's a hobby that could one day save lives, maybe yours or your neighbors. And if you really don't want to get a license, at least buy a radio to listen. You can legally listen to ham frequencies without any license. You might pick up life-saving info that way, and again, in a dire emergency, you could press transmit and call for help. Just know that's like driving without ever learning. Better to practice first. 7. CB radio, old-school citizens band for neighborhood and road. A classic CB radio-based station setup. CBs require only a power source, like a car battery, and an antenna to let you communicate locally when other systems fail. Next up, another blast from the past, CB radio, citizens band. Think truckers on the highway saying, 10-4, good buddy. Believe it or not, CBs are still around and can be extremely useful in emergencies. Why? Because like other radios we've discussed, they don't depend on any infrastructure, no cell towers, no internet, and unlike ham, no license or training is required. Anyone can pick up a CB radio and start talking. Hopefully politely, but CB isn't exactly known for its etiquette. During disasters, CB radio has often been a reliable backup, especially for local communications. They are so simple. Just a radio, an antenna, and a source of power, your car's 12V or some batteries. As long as those things are intact, CB works even when other forms of communication have gone down. A storm can knock out phone lines, but your CB will still squawk. CB operates on 40 channels in the AM 27 MHz band, basically short-range HF. The range you get can vary a lot. Expect a few miles reliably. 5 miles is a common rule of thumb with a decent antenna. With an optimized setup, say a tall antenna on your house or car, you might reach 10, 20 miles. CB signals also have an interesting quirk. During certain atmospheric conditions, ionospheric skip, they can bounce and go much further, sometimes hundreds of miles. That's not reliable day to day, but it's a fun fact that sometimes you might unexpectedly hear distant stations. Generally, though, think of CB as useful for neighborhood or car-to-car comms. One big advantage, everyone knows Channel 9 and 19. Channel 9 on CB is traditionally the emergency channel. In the old days, highway patrol and volunteer groups monitored Channel 9 for distress calls. Today, official monitoring is rare, but some volunteer react groups still listen, and during a disaster, you might find Good Samaritan ears on Channel 9. It's worth trying if you need help. For example, emergency, emergency, does anyone copy? I need assistance at location. Channel 19 is the road info channel, truckers. If you're evacuating or traveling, tuning to 19 can give you real-time reports on traffic, road conditions, or hazards from truck drivers. In a disaster exodus, that's gold. For personal family use, consider having a mobile CB radio in your vehicle. These are relatively cheap, $50, $150, and run on 12 volts, Using an external antenna, magnet mount antennas make installation easy. You can also get handheld CB radios that look like big walkie-talkies with a long antenna. They're portable but usually have much shorter range unless hooked to a full-size antenna. If you and your relatives or neighbors all got CBs, you could establish a simple comms network. Say after a hurricane, you could all agree to meet on Channel 8 for neighborhood status updates at the top of each hour. Sounds a bit like overkill, until you realize cell service might be out for days. Then it's genius. Preppers sometimes include CBs as a second line behind ham radios, precisely because no license is needed. Anyone in the group can use it. Grandpa, who never touched a smartphone in his life, can operate a CB. Flip the switch, pick up the mic, press the button, and talk. One more notable point. CB radios are extremely resilient. No fancy microchips needed. Older ones are basically analog devices. They can often take a beating, and as long as you can power it, say from a car battery or a solar generator, it'll work. You could run a CB straight off a car battery for many hours of talk. Even just a pair of AA batteries and a handheld can keep you on air for a while. And unlike high-frequency ham rigs that might need tuning and SWR matching and all that, CB is plug-and-play for the most part. Just don't transmit without an antenna connected. That can fry the radio. Keep an antenna as high as you can for best range on a vehicle roof or a rooftop for a base station. In terms of overlooked, CB is a bit of a forgotten option these days. People assume it died with the 70s trucker craze, but it's still kicking, and certain communities, off-roaders, RV owners, truck drivers, use it a lot. For emergency prep, it's a nice middle ground. Easier than ham, longer range than FRS walkie-talkies in many cases, and very accessible. Plus, it can be kind of fun hearing the colorful chatter on the airwaves, though be warned, CB is the Wild West. You'll get foul language and BS along with useful info. So if you have room in your comms plan, consider a CB radio. You might be pleasantly surprised how handy it becomes. At the very least, you can listen in for situational awareness. And if things get truly desperate and you're calling Mayday on every channel, don't forget Channel 9. Maybe, just maybe, someone out there is listening, ready to send help. Breaker 1, 9, this is Home Prepper. Anybody copy? That might be your rescue call. 8. Satellite Messenger, texting off-grid. Now we're venturing into high-tech territory. Imagine being able to send a text message to your loved ones or call for rescue from anywhere in the world, even if there's not a single cell tower or phone line for hundreds of miles. That's what a satellite messenger allows you to do. Devices like the Garmin InReach Mini, Spot X, or ACR Bivy Stick use satellite networks, like Iridium or Globalstar, to send short text messages and GPS coordinates from virtually anywhere on Earth. These gadgets are popular with backcountry hikers, hunters, sailors, anyone who goes off-grid, but they are absolute lifesavers in major disasters too. They don't require any local infrastructure. If you can see the sky, you can likely get a message out via satellite. Here's how it works. Take the Garmin InReach as an example. It's a palm-sized device. You power it on, it acquires a GPS fix, and it can send your location and a custom text message to a phone number or email that you specify. It does this by uplinking to satellites orbiting above, completely bypassing Earth-based networks. So even if your whole region has no power, no cell service, you can shoot a message to Uncle Joe in another state saying, "We're safe at home" or "Need help. Can you relay info to authorities?" There's also an SOS button covered by a safety cap. Press that, and it sends a distress signal to a professional emergency response coordination center. Garmin's is the GOS center. They'll start a rescue response for you, contacting local search and rescue, etc., and communicate with you via text on the device. It's basically 911 that works anywhere. This is exactly how lost hikers get rescued from deep in the wilderness nowadays. Real-world example. During the 2023 Maui wildfires, as I mentioned earlier, certain areas completely lost cell and internet. One resort safety manager on West Maui happened to have a SAT device, a satellite phone, slightly different but same idea. He ended up being the only person in that area who could communicate with the outside world, relaying critical information to authorities via satellite. That's huge. Imagine if every shelter or neighborhood had one SAT messenger. They could have coordinated much faster. In his case, he even used it to call a local radio station to broadcast emergency info to those with radios. So yes, these devices are worth their weight in gold in a crisis. There are a few considerations: cost and limits. The devices themselves run a few $100s, around $300, $400 for an inReach or similar. And they require a subscription service. Plans vary, but for example, Garmin's basic plan is about $15 per month for maybe 10 texts. You can buy more messages or go to a pricier plan for more usage. Some allow you to suspend service in off months, so it's a recurring cost. But if you're an avid adventurer or live in a disaster-prone area, many people happily pay it year-round. Also, messages are not instantaneous like iMessage. It might take 20-60 seconds to send or receive a text, sometimes a couple of minutes if satellite coverage is momentarily spotty. Satellites move, but the device will retry until it goes through. And you're generally limited to short texts, often 160 characters, per message. So you won't be having a long back-and-forth conversation like, "So what are you doing?" "Hey, not much, you," in an emergency. It's more like, "August 15th, 5 p.m. We are okay at home. House intact. No power or water. We'll move to shelter tomorrow." That kind of thing. Concise and mission-critical. One great feature: you can usually pre-program a few preset messages that don't count against your limit. E.g., "I'm okay, reached my destination," etc. And your contacts can reply to you. The devices often assign you a temporary phone number or email relay to get replies. Setting one up is fairly user-friendly, but do read the manual and test it when you first get it. Send a couple texts to your own phone or a friend to see how it works. Also, keep it charged. Their battery life is quite good. A small messenger can last several days on standby. But if you're in a prolonged emergency, you'll want a way to recharge it, like a solar charger or USB battery pack. I'd say for general American families, a satellite messenger is gaining traction as a key emergency item, especially after events like hurricanes where people are cut off. It's the kind of thing where 10 years ago it was exotic, but now you have Apple enabling emergency satellite texting on iPhones and such, indicating how vital this capability is. If you can't afford a sat phone, we'll get to those next, or don't need full voice comms, a SATI messenger is a more affordable compromise. In summary, a satellite texting device is your ticket to call for help or reassure loved ones when you're otherwise off the grid. It's hard to put a price on that peace of mind. Definitely consider it if you live somewhere with frequent disasters, hello California wildfires, Gulf Coast hurricanes, etc., or even if you travel a lot through remote areas. It's one of those, hope I never need it, but if I do, I'll be so glad I have it pieces of gear. 9. Satellite phone, voice calls from anywhere. This is the big brother of the satellite messenger, the satellite phone. Think of movies where the hero pulls out a bulky phone with an antenna to call in an airstrike or report from a war zone. That's a sat phone. And while they used to be either military gear or ultra-expensive toys, they're now within reach for civilians who really need them. In essence, a satellite phone is a cell phone-like device that connects directly to satellites to make voice calls, and sometimes send SMS or even data slowly. Unlike the satellite messengers, which are mostly one-way or limited texting, a sat phone gives you real-time two-way voice communication. In a grid-down scenario, that means you can pick it up and call 911, call your mom, call anyone, and have a conversation just like normal, all while the terrestrial phone network around you is kaput. Here's why that's huge. In many disasters, getting a detailed message out is hard via text alone. Maybe you need to explain your situation to emergency services or coordinate with multiple people. With a sat phone, you're essentially leaping over the disaster zone and using satellites as your personal cell tower. It doesn't matter if every cell tower in your state is down, the sat phone will work as long as it has line of sight to the sky and the satellite network is operational. Sat networks have their own infrastructure, often with earth stations far outside the disaster area. We saw the impact of this in Maui's fires. One man's satellite phone on West Maui allowed him to communicate with the state government when all other phones failed. Officials literally passed that phone around because it was the only working line. After Hurricane Maria, aid workers and some government teams used sat phones to talk to FEMA and others when local comms were gone. Sat phones are also regularly deployed by relief agencies in earthquakes and such. They're standard issue for being able to coordinate when nothing else works. Now, why didn't I list this before the text messengers? Mainly because of cost. Satellite phones are more expensive devices, often $600 and up for a handset, though you can sometimes rent them. And the airtime is pricey. You might pay $1 to $2 per minute of talking, or buy bundles of minutes. The subscription or prepaid SIM for a sat phone can also have monthly costs, so it's not a casual purchase for most families. Satellite messengers hit a sweet spot of lower cost but limited functionality. Sat phones give full functionality at higher cost. If you have the budget or a critical need, say you care for someone with medical issues and you must be able to call an ambulance even in a blackout, a sat phone might be a worthwhile investment. There are a couple major networks. Iridium, truly global coverage, including oceans and poles. Iridium phones are popular like the 9555 or 9575 models. And Globalstar, more limited coverage, more US-centric, but slightly cheaper devices in some cases. There's also Inmarsat for certain models, covers most of globe except extreme poles. Each has its plans and pros, cons. Iridium is often considered the gold standard for reliability and coverage. Using a sat phone is straightforward. You dial a number, often you have to include country codes since it's global, and hit call. There might be a slight delay, half a second to a second, because of the satellite link, but otherwise it sounds like a cell call, maybe with a bit of static. Modern sat phones can also do SMS texts and some very slow data. You wouldn't want to browse the web on one unless necessary. Think dial-up speeds, or worse. But you could send an email from a laptop hooked to a sat phone if you had to, for instance. Important tips. Always use it outdoors or with an external antenna. Sat phones need direct line of sight to the satellites. Indoors, they usually won't get a signal, unless you're right by a window, and even then it's sketchy. In a city with tall buildings, you might have to find a clearing or rooftop. Urban canyons can block the signal. Keep the antenna fully extended and pointed upwards. Some sat phones have a GPS or a little aiming indicator to help you find the satellite. Also, be mindful of battery life. Keep it charged and maybe have an extra battery. Generally, sat phones have decent standby times, many hours, but talk time might be just a few hours total, and if you're in a crisis making lots of calls, you don't want it dying, so have a 12V car adapter or solar charger that can plug into it. One more consideration: privacy and security. Sat phone communications go through satellites and ground stations. They are generally encrypted by the network, but various governments can intercept or log them. In a disaster scenario, this probably doesn't matter to you. You just care that it works. But just be aware these are not covert comms. They're just resilient comms. For a family, the scenario might be big earthquake hits, cell network is down. You pull out your sat phone, call a relative out of state to let them know your status and to relay messages. You call emergency services if needed. Many sat phones can call 911, and those calls will go to rescue coordination centers. It might take longer to route, but it works. You might also use it to coordinate with neighbors or local officials if they also have sat phones. Actually, a savvy prepper neighborhood could pool together to buy one sat phone for the community as a shared resource. Given that even iPhones now have a rudimentary satellite SOS feature built in, though it's only for texting pre-scripted emergency messages, not a full phone call, we are heading toward a future where satellite comms might be commonplace. But until then, a dedicated sat phone is the way to get true voice comms off-grid. It is definitely an overlooked tool for most people because of the assumption that it's only for jungle explorers or the rich. But if you live in, say, Hurricane Alley and absolutely need to stay connected, you might find it's worth every penny when the time comes. It's like having a direct line out of the apocalypse. In short, a sat phone is communication independence. It laughs at power outages and infrastructure failures. The only things it depends on are the laws of physics and the satellite network's uptime, which historically has been excellent. Keep it charged, Keep minutes on it and pray you never need to use it. But if you do, you'll be able to reach anyone, anywhere from anywhere. That's a powerful capability when all other options are gone. 10. Portable satellite internet, Starlink. Bring the web back online. Finally, let's talk about a game changer that's newly available: portable satellite internet, specifically SpaceX Starlink. This takes the satellite idea even further. Instead of just a phone call or a text, Starlink can give you an actual broadband internet connection in the middle of a grid-down disaster zone. It's like dropping a 21st century communications hub into the apocalypse. With internet, of course, comes the ability to use almost any communication app or service. Email, WhatsApp, video calls, you name it. This is advanced stuff, but it's no longer science fiction. Starlink is a network of thousands of low Earth orbit satellites that provide high-speed internet. In early 2022, SpaceX started selling portable Starlink kits, first called Starlink RV, now Starlink Roam, that you can deploy anywhere in the Starlink coverage area, which is most of the US and over 50-plus countries. The hardware is a flat dish, about the size of a large briefcase, and a Wi-Fi router. Normally you need AC power, wall outlet, to run it, but people have run them off solar generators and car batteries. It draws about 60 watts typically, which is like a couple of incandescent light bulbs, so not trivial, but absolutely doable with a small portable power station and solar panel. Why is this awesome for emergency comms? Because it means you can get online even if your entire region's infrastructure is toast. Starlink doesn't rely on local internet cables or cell towers. The dish beams directly to the satellites overhead and down to ground stations that are often far outside the affected area. For instance, if a hurricane wipes out Florida, a Starlink dish in Florida might connect to a ground station in Georgia or elsewhere that's still up, restoring your link to the world. We saw Starlink in action during disasters like the war in Ukraine, where SpaceX shipped Starlink kits to keep the country's communications up under attack, and during hurricanes. In fact, after Hurricane Ian in 2022, Starlink units were deployed to cut off communities in Florida so people could contact family and access information. And they've been used in wildfires and floods, basically providing emergency Wi-Fi hotspots for responders and victims. For a personal setup, having Starlink means even if you're in a prolonged blackout, you could potentially continue working remotely via satellite or at least keep informed and in touch. You could do video calls to family to show you're okay, upload footage to authorities, get on social media to share updates, assuming you want to. It's everything the internet offers, when normally the internet would be down. Let's talk performance. Starlink speeds can be anywhere from approximately 50 Mbps to 150 megabits per second or more in ideal conditions. That's comparable to regular home broadband. Latency, delay, is low too. 20 to 40 ms typically, so you can even do Zoom or online gaming. Now, in a disaster scenario, you likely don't care about Netflix, but the point is, it's fast enough for any communication needs. Importantly, Starlink has unlimited data, at least for now in most plans, so you won't run out of megabytes in the middle of an emergency Zoom or data upload. Traditional satellite internet, like old HughesNet or BGN terminals, had tiny data caps and slow speeds. Starlink changed that game entirely. However, there are downsides. The power requirement. You need a way to supply approximately 50 watts continuously. If you have a solar generator, one of those battery inverter boxes, with say 500 plus watt hours, you could run Starlink for 8-10 hours on that. Add solar panels in daytime to extend that. Or run it off a gas generator if you have fuel, but that's noisy and not always convenient. This is why as preppers we also plan power solutions, but that's another topic. At least Starlink's dish is designed to be easy to set up. It's motorized to find satellites automatically. You just need to put it where it has a clear view of the sky, no obstructions like trees, buildings as much as possible. Within a few minutes, it points itself and you're online. The other factor, cost. The hardware kit is around $599 for the portable version in the US, and the service is about $150 per month for the Roam Anywhere plan. That's a lot if you're not using it daily. Some people only pay seasonally or when needed. This is more likely a solution for serious preparedness enthusiasts, businesses, or community groups. But I will say, if you split it among a neighborhood or group, $150 per month for emergency capability might be justifiable. And SpaceX has been known to step in and give free service during major disasters. They did so in some wildfire and hurricane cases for first responders. In the future, prices may come down, or other competitors, OneWeb, Amazon's Kuiper, may offer similar gear cheaper. If you do have Starlink, imagine the possibilities. You effectively become the communication hub for your community. Neighbors could use your Wi-Fi to email their families, local officials could come to send reports, etc. You'd basically have an independent internet cafe in a blackout. That's pretty heroic. A quick anecdote. I recently acquired a Starlink for my own off-grid adventures, and I tested it during a local power outage. While everyone's fiber internet was off, I plopped the dish in my yard, fired up a portable battery, and boom! I was the only one in the neighborhood streaming news updates in HD and emailing from my laptop. It was surreal and made me a believer in this tech for emergency use. Keep in mind, Starlink does need some minimal networking know-how to use effectively. You have to set up the router, possibly position the dish optimally, etc. It's not hard, pretty much plug and play, but it's not as simple as turning on a radio. So familiarize yourself with it if you get one. Maybe use it on camping trips so you know its quirks. To sum up, portable satellite internet is the ultimate comms backup, basically bringing all modern communication back to you. It is still an emerging, somewhat costly solution, but it's no longer a fantasy. It exists, and it has already proven invaluable in disasters around the world. If you can incorporate it into your emergency plan, you'll be on the cutting edge of preparedness. While your neighbors are totally in the dark, you'll be checking the news, calling relatives over Wi-Fi, and even helping others send messages. Just remember that it too depends on power, so pair it with a robust off-grid power supply. Do that, and you've pretty much beat the grid-down scenario at its own game. That's our list of 10 often overlooked communication methods for when the power grid, and all it supports, goes down. Notice how we covered a spectrum from low-tech to high-tech, cheap to expensive, short-range to worldwide. The key to real preparedness is layering. You don't want to rely on just one thing. Have multiple options, because you never know which one might save the day. Maybe the cell networks will actually stay up and a quick text is all you need. Great. But if not, you have a whistle and mirror to signal rescuers. You have walkie-talkies to coordinate with family nearby. You have a crank radio to receive news. You have a ham radio to reach across the state for help. And you even have satellite comms to get a message out to the rest of the globe. A few closing tips. Make a family comms plan. This includes an out-of-state contact everyone will try to message or call. Often it's easier to reach someone outside the disaster zone. Write this down and give a copy to all family members. Also decide on meetup spots if communications fail. Practice using your gear. Don't buy a ham radio or a sat messenger and leave it in a box. Test it. Use it on a sunny day so you're not fumbling in the dark, literally and figuratively, during a crisis. Check batteries in that radio. Make sure the flashlight in it works. Do a practice run of sending a satellite text, etc. Power is king. All the fancy comm devices mean nothing if they're dead. Plan for charging, keep spare batteries, and rotate them yearly. Invest in a solar charger for USB gadgets. Even a small 20W panel can slowly charge a phone or radio during the day. Consider a generator or battery bank for the bigger stuff like Starlink, or to keep phones topped up for days. In long outages, fuel for generators runs out and outlets don't work. Solar and car chargers and hand cranks fill the gap. Stay informed. Know your local emergency broadcast stations. Write them down. AM such and such, NOAA frequency X. If you have neighbors into radio, coordinate with them. Maybe you all get on CB Channel 12 at 9 p.m. daily to share updates after a disaster, etc. Communication in a disaster is about both getting information and sending information. You want to know what's going on, and you want to let others know your status. The tools we discussed each address different pieces of that puzzle. Together, they ensure you're not helplessly shouting into the void. To the American families reading this, I hope this guide has opened your eyes to some new ideas, and maybe reminded you of some old ones. A crisis is not the time you want to be learning how to communicate. Do it now, prep now, and you'll ride out the next blackout or hurricane far more confidently. Your neighbors might be sitting in the dark with no clue what's happening, but you won't. You'll have a plan, a radio crackling with news, a way to call for help, and likely you'll be the one helping others get connected too. Stay safe, stay prepared, and as we say in ham radio, 73, best regards. When the grid goes down, you'll be ready to make some noise and get the message through.